Hello guys, welcome back to our anime shorts. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Perfect World based on novel. So let's start. Three Life Mountain was 20,000 li or so from Stone Country imperial capital, and known to be an extremely spiritual area. Beautiful mountain peaks towered next to each other, and spiritual essence flowed in abundance. Shi Hao chose a small mountain that was relatively isolated and built a grass hut. Brought out the 10,000 spirit diagram, and carefully studied and reviewed it. This was his path, as well as his Tao. Every time he observed it, he would obtain a different type of comprehension. There were all types of creatures on its surface, including those as powerful as the Kuan-peng and as weak as the ants. However, they were all extremely great. Why don't I see any creatures like those exceptional talents that have innate unique divine abilities? Shi Hao said to himself. Based on what the Willow deity said, the Supreme Being Bone was extremely powerful, but in the end, it might also be shackles from one's ultimate transcendence. Shi Hao studied the 10,000 spirit diagram, and combined everything together. He began to contemplate his path from today onward. During the following days, he temporarily put down the 10,000 spirit diagram, and continuously studied his own bone's profound mysteries. Formation arrangement realm was the engraving of all types of formations in one's flesh. Shi Hao made his decision. He was going to engrave all of the symbols in his body, making sure that it was in every inch of his blood and flesh instead of only having it on this piece of bone. The following half a month was filled a period of great hardships and challenges for Shi Hao. He had already clearly seen all of the symbols on the Supreme Being Bone and obtained them all. He was now doing everything he could to carve them all into his body's bones and flesh. He placed quite a bit of importance on this. After experiencing several life and death great battles, he deeply felt that the precious technique in his body was the most powerful one. This wasn't saying that his precious technique was number one under heaven. The Kuan-peng technique was extremely powerful and known as one of the archaic vicious 10. Its might shocked the ancients and present, but the Kuan-peng race's technique, when used by a human, couldn't necessarily become the most powerful. Only his own technique, or the precious technique he produced himself, was most suitable for him. The purpose of this was to break into the supreme expert realm. He continuously carved symbols. After reaching perfection, he would naturally advance and undergo a transformation. He wanted to reach the point where one day, even if he didn't have the Supreme Being Bone, he would still be able to display this technique. At that time, even if these symbols weren't on his flesh and bones, they would similarly be produced, and there wouldn't be any restrictions on its uses. So difficult. Shi Hao sighed. He discovered that when these symbols were engraved into his flesh and bones, after a few days, most of them would be absorbed by the Supreme Being Bone and land on its surface. There is a bit of resplendent essence blood on the Supreme Being Bone, and it is this blood that is nourishing the bone. What would happen if I guided this blood into the other parts of my body instead of having it purely nourish the bone? However, he didn't dare act recklessly, because this was too dangerous. He needed to carefully study and made deductions before making a decision. The next month was an extremely important process for Shi Hao. After deducing and thinking about various matters for a long time, he felt that he had to give it a try. During this period of time, the nine-headed lion, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yuyu, and others came to visit. They were deeply concerned, but they saw that he was just cultivating in isolation, so they didn't disturb him. Inside of an ancient palace, chaotic energy pervaded the air, making everything indistinct. This place was hazy and mysterious. Everyone, what do you all think? A figure that was shrouded inside the energy of primal chaos spoke. It will be different from before. We need to send an expert who ignited their divine flame for a long term, not for just a few days, and not just for a few dozen years, but all the way until they successfully find the transcendence piece and other natural luck. The palace immediately became quiet. No one said anything for a long time. Heavenly Country's blood sacrifice has been prepared. Can everyone offer some contributions, perhaps contacting disciples in the lower realms to help and carry out some blood sacrifices? This individual was hazy and indistinct like an illusion. My underworld Earth has a void beast skeleton that is close to Supreme Being level. We can use it to break through the realm. I have a condition, and that is to kill the youth named Shi Hao. This individual was roiling in black mist, and there was chaotic light as well. He was terrifyingly powerful. I agree. Lower realm, flood region. This was a great pond with heavy mists everywhere. It was unknown when an altar had been constructed. It was entirely black in color, and many demonic symbols were carved on its surface. That day, a few more figures appeared on this altar that originated from different inheritances. None of them revealed their true bodies, and after giving each other a look, they silently nodded before leaving together. Flood region, inside of a certain ancient country, evil winds stirred about in all directions, and great mists shrouded the heavens. A figure waved his large sleeves, and it was unknown just how many creatures were immediately swept up. Soon after, this region became completely silent. In another place that didn't belong to the human race resided the Wood Clan's country. It was incomparably flourishing, but today, it similarly suffered a disaster. A shining figure towered high up in the sky with a blood gourd in hand. It devoured everything, sucking all creatures inside. Similar events happened in another great earth. An expert carried a heaven and earth pouch, and began to frantically suck in the creatures below. Among them, there was a silver lion that was extremely powerful and struggling fiercely. It saw the true appearance of the individual that took action. You are a newly advanced supreme expert, from an undying great sect. Why are you doing this? Unfortunately, no one paid him any attention. What happened that day would inevitably shake the world. It would be recorded in the annals of history. Meanwhile, the higher realms were greatly shaken as well. This will perhaps affect the tens of thousands of years and leave long-lasting effects that were difficult to assess. Lower realm, Three Life Mountain. Shi Hao remained in isolation for 2 months. That day, he felt something strange, as if he couldn't calm his mind. He woke up from his state of Tao comprehension. An hour later, a group of children followed around Shi Hao's side, making a racket as they walked through the large street together. Big bro, I want to eat tang hulu. On Shi Hao's left shoulder sat a 2 or 3-year-old little girl. He had just learned how to walk recently. He was also drooling while pointing outwards. Boss, give every child one. Shi Hao chuckled, all right. The boss was beaming with joy. The group of children immediately cheered and flocked forward, cramming their way forward and surrounding the tang hulu stand. After leaving this small town, he disappeared with a flash and returned to Three Life Mountain. He became self-aware that even though his cultivation had become powerful, I am a flesh and blood person. I really can't understand those so-called deities, who like to look down on everyone from so high up. Several figures descended onto the altar, all of them silently occupying a corner of this place. They carefully examined the symbols on the altar, seeing if there were any imperfections. Finally, an individual in a grey robe said with a hoarse voice, "Begin. World in blood sacrifice, darkness of deities, open up an eternal path and allow heavenly country to descend onto this world." Someone muttered, as if they were chanting a curse. The trees all around him appeared dreary, and leaves fluttered about in disorder. Hong! A white-clad individual waved a sleeve, and then over 10 million people howled in grief. They poured down from the sky like rain onto the black altar. This was a calamity, like a living hell. Strings of demonic symbols lit up, wriggling about like little snakes. They turned into streaks of lightning, carrying bloody light and the power of souls. The anguished wailing of countless people resounded through the air. This was a tragic calamity. Another person moved as well. The blood gourd in his hand opened, and countless creatures fell outwards. Some of them exploded in the void, while others fell to their deaths on the altar. It was an extremely tragic scene. Blood sacrifice. Finally, all of the grief, tears, and cries of anguish were drowned out by these 2 emotionless words. It immediately connected to the higher realms to open a gate. Inside the higher realms' mysterious palace, I have received the cries. The blood sacrifices have startled, so let's cooperate to open up a passage and have creatures that have ignited their divine flames descend into the lower realm to search for those natural opportunities. An enormous skeleton appeared towering in the ancient palace. Its surroundings directly became vague, distortion and warping about. All types of passages appeared on its own. This was a void beast, one with strength that could match a supreme giant. It had fallen in underworld earth, and had now turned into a skeleton that was excellently preserved. This is my underworld earth's sect protecting supreme treasure. You wouldn't be able to find many void beasts like this even if you searched all of the higher realms. Everyone, why don't we begin? It isn't enough. Please sacrifice the void beast skin as well. Only then can we truly open a path, and it will allow us to fight the will of heaven. Only then can our disciples remain forever in the lower realm, and not just temporarily. Another individual said. A wave of silence filled this place. Underworld Earth's master raised his hand, and an enormous beast skin flew out, landing on that skeleton and covering it. Have them proceed. Someone said. Over 10 creatures appeared. They came from different races, and all of them had their divine flames lit. These people all flew into a copper furnace, using this to protect themselves. This was a sect-protecting magical artifact that normal deities couldn't refine, use, or even see before. Void furnace. Someone said softly. This was definitely quite the great expense. This furnace shrank, turning into the size of a fist. Then, it entered the void beast's skull before disappearing. World in blood sacrifice. Against heaven's will. These voices sounded from within the main hall. Then, everyone formed imprints and worked together to open a passageway to form a connection with the lower realm. Evil winds immediately roared angrily through this place. Chaotic energy surged, and the palace hall twisted about, becoming indistinct. A crack appeared, opening up a path. The void beast dove down, disappearing into the lower realm in the blink of an eye. Lower realm, flood region, lightning flashed and thunder rolled in the sky. All types of symbols appeared, colliding with the bloody light that rushed into the heavens. What happened? There is blood flowing between heaven and earth. This someone has incurred a great deathly tribulation. This is the legendary heaven's tears. Even the cultivators, that were secluded deep in the mountains or waters, raised their heads. They were all startled and revealed shocked expressions. An enormous sound rang out. Heaven and earth split apart. Black lightning that carried bloody light shot through the sky. Light shone resplendently behind it. Countless streaks of lightning hacked downwards, chasing after it to carry out heavenly punishment. Heavens! It's a void beast, one that is so large. Something like this is unheard of. Are they trying to defy the heavens? Void beasts were extremely rare and hard to grow. Even after one matured, they wouldn't be this large. This scene shocked every single person. This was the wrath of heaven. However, there seemed to be some wills that were opposing it, interfering with the heavenly punishment, distorting heaven and earth and destroying the natural laws. The chaotic light on its body suddenly turned into symbols. They covered it densely, and at this moment, they exploded, making the enormous beast body shine. The entire beast's skin immediately began to burn, and then it formed a furnace. Powerful divine might scattered outwards, illuminating the horizon. It was as if a comet from outer space was smashing into the great earth. However, it was still affected. Rumbling sounds rang through the air. The ancient and mysterious symbols of the divine furnace began to protect itself, and it quickly enlarged. Void furnace, it turned into the size of a mountain, but its surface was already greatly damaged with many areas caving in. It suffered great damage. The altar was immediately destroyed. Countless souls cried out in anguish, disintegrating under the holy light, and forever disappearing. Another hour passed. A dang metallic sound rang through the air, ending the deathly stillness. There were experts who were still alive inside. They now tried to break out. 15 minutes later, that cap was blasted off. It flew outwards. This was because it only had its sturdiness, and no longer possessed rich magical force, so one could remove it with brute force. A hand that was covered in blood held the furnace entrance, before reaching out with difficulty. This was a silver-haired youngster with black pupils and pale white face. His arms were dripping with blood. He looked around him, and then, a cold smile appeared at the corners of his lips. Success. I descended into the lower realm. Inside the great valley, the void furnace once again sounded. Its bones were all in perfect shape. They were completely golden and flowing with brilliant luster. There wasn't a bit of yin energy, and it instead looked holy. Meanwhile, there was a pair of wings on its back that was connected to its spine. I didn't die and successfully entered the lower realm. That transcendent peace will definitely be obtained. The 7 figures stood together, their divine flames raging resplendently. They appeared fearless and domineering. Their existences seemed to transcend this world. This realm didn't have that many powerful creatures, so they couldn't compare to these 7. Look like 7 devils that were overlooking the world. Are the others all dead? Someone spoke with an extremely cold voice. With a hong sound, the only elderly individual here brought the void furnace over with a raise of his hand. The golden skeleton opened its mouth and transmitted its divine will, saying, "Everyone, do not forget that Underworld Lord has given the order to have us first end the life of that youth named Shi Hao to prevent him from living. Another day. There is no rush. The lower realm is quite strange, so let's not act indiscriminately either." 3 Life Mountain, in front of a grass hut. Shi Hao received the news and sank into a state of silence. No wonder it had been so peaceful during this period of time without anything happening. The most dreadful things finally still came. Countless lives went missing. Many great tribes turned into places of death, and several large clans directly vanished. There were even small countries that became quiet. Just how many people died? He said to himself. He knew that that was a blood sacrifice. The bone books had recorded such a thing before. It was the most cruel and heartless thing. Everyone would be turned into sacrifices. It would harm the harmony of the world and trigger a terrifying phenomenon. The War King, Commander Peng 9, and the others all ask your esteemed self to retreat, and bear this silently, said the individual that delivered the information. There were more than a single creature with their divine flame ignited. Who could stop them? In this era without deities, whoever appeared would die. Even if they were discontent, they had to hold it in. I understand. You should return. Shi Hao nodded. He didn't want to retreat, because the people that came down were definitely looking for him. The Imperial Guard's face became pale. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but didn't know what to say. He felt great respect when facing this abdicated human emperor. If there are grudges, then just come straight here and go through me first. Shi Hao indicated for him to leave. There were some times when there was no other choice. He would not escape, even if he might die. A cool breeze gently blew through this place. The plants here were fresh and clean. Shi Hao stood on the mountaintop alone while staring into the distance. A mist drifted through this beautiful mountain, carrying multicolored splendor with it, making it look like a place of paradise. However, this was definitely not going to be a peaceful time. Blood was going to flow, and a great storm was going to rage. However, loud shouts that were made with trembling voices sounded. Qin Yining and Shi Xiling came, hurrying over as soon as they could. When they received the news, they became incomparably worried, crossing over regions to come here. Father, mother, Shi Hao revealed a smile. Being able to see them now cleared up his heart quite a bit, settling some of his last desires. No matter what happened now, he wouldn't be that regretful anymore. However, hurry and leave. You cannot stay here. Qin Yining was completely serious and pulled at Shi Hao to leave. Shi Hao shook his head and struggled free from her hands. Mother, I cannot leave. Qin Yining began to feel nervous. She naturally knew what her own son had done, making the higher realms his enemy. He was definitely going to be the target of this impending storm. However, don't be like that. We had lost you before, and now, we finally managed to reunite with such difficulty. We cannot let any accidents happen again. We won't be able to take it anymore. Even Shi Xiling's voice began to tremble, wishing to bring Shi Hao away. They were extremely worried and felt absolutely terrified. They tightly grabbed Shi Hao's arm and weren't willing to let go, feeling that they had to bring him away. Father, mother, you two don't have to worry. How can I just die? Of course, I'll live properly. I still haven't eaten true dragon, or immortal phoenix meat, and I didn't even go to the higher realms yet. I can't bear to part with you two either. Don't worry, I will run immediately if I have to. I definitely won't die. Shi Hao comforted them, giving them his promise. Then, he changed the topic, asking about how Qin Hao has been recently and what exactly was happening. There were a few dangers, but it still succeeded. He succeeded. Shi Hao was astonished. This was also the reason why Shi Xiling and his wife didn't come out all this time, staying by Immortal Mountain. How is younger brother's recovery process going? Shi Hao was rather concerned, because this was an extremely dangerous event. His vitality is quite great and has long produced that type of essence blood. Shi Hao nodded. There wasn't much to worry about then. Shi Hao should be able to recover as soon as possible and become more and more powerful. In reality, he was quite curious. Exactly how powerful was that bone? After meeting his parents, some of Shi Hao's wishes were satisfied. Right now, he wanted to go back to Stone Village and take a look. He truly wasn't willing to part with them now and wanted to give it a final look. Stone Village was the place he entrusted his heart to. That place was full of peacefulness, a place that was exceptionally wonderful. He would never put that place in danger. Stone Village was just as important to him as his parents. Shi Hao's expression became grave. This was the paper crane that he left behind in Stone Country Imperial Palace. If they didn't find him at Three Life Mountain, they could send the paper crane into the surroundings to send him messages. He opened up the letter and read the contents. "Big brother, are you going to leave?" The little boy on his shoulder asked while staring at him reluctantly with his big eyes. "I have to go. I'll come back to see you guys later." Shi Hao smiled and said. On the other shoulder, that young girl curled her lips, looking like she was going to cry. "Big brother, you are going to leave. When can I see you again?" "We'll meet again if fate wills it." Shi Hao lowered them and quickly left. "Father, mother, you two can rest easy. I am going to go into hiding now, but I cannot follow you all into Immortal Mountain." Just now, he received information that several deities descended in Stone Country capital, stating for him to appear, or else a massacre would be carried out. Shi Hao clenched his fists. He secluded himself in Three Life Mountain to fight them alone and break away the connection between himself and others to shoulder the responsibility alone. However, those deities considered themselves to be unexcelled in the world, directly sending a message outwards, and not willing to move. Stone capital was extremely magnificent. There was a type of metallic luster to the city walls, which came from flickering symbols. It had a grand and imposing aura. Shi Hao stood in front of the city for a long time, facing this situation of death. He carefully thought to himself, remaining silent for a long time. In the end, he calmly entered the city. Shi Hao calmed his heart. He personally arrived in front of the Imperial Palace, not bringing the divine striking stone with him, nor carrying the Emperor Butterfly on him. Shi Hao already understood that those supreme deities entered Stone Country's restricted area, and were occupying the Imperial Palace. The multicolored radiance of morning shone brilliantly, covering Shi Hao in a layer of sparkling luster. He walked into the city and looked at the many palaces. "Stone Emperor." The city guard cried out with shock, and his face immediately changed. He was terrified and panicking as he said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, please retreat." After all, they were deities. Even though the formations were powerful, without someone at the corresponding cultivation realm to operate them, you came. A voice came from inside the Central Imperial. It was calm and casual sounding, yet it resounded through everyone's ears, ringing with wung sounds. "Your Majesty, you shouldn't have returned." There were a few guards that had not retreated at the entrance. They all carried bloody traces, and had panicked expressions as they transmitted sound to Shi Hao. "All of you, withdraw," Shi Hao ordered. Shi Hao walked into the Heavenly Palace. There were many guards lying on the ground that were groaning in pain. Blood flowed about on the ground. The Central Heavenly Palace wasn't attacked even when the three sects came to attack last time, but today, it was a crushing defeat. They were beaten into a hopeless position and completely occupied. "You are that Shi Hao?" A voice sounded. It was a skeleton that was faint golden in color. There wasn't any yin energy on it, and it instead appeared quite peaceful. Behind him was a pair of pure white wings, making him appear even more holy. He had without a doubt come from Underworld Earth, a deity that had ignited the Underworld flame. "You are still so young, it really is rather unexpected." Even his skull was faint golden. The lower jaw was moving, releasing ka sounds, but he was using divine will to speak. "What a pity Underworld Lord wants you dead." There was a deity sitting high above everyone else on the dragon pattern throne. Below his feet was a youth. It was precisely Qing Feng. His face was pale white, and blood trickled out from the corners of his lips. "Release him," Shi Hao shouted. "I am quite the gentle person. I didn't want his life, but he dared to treat me disrespectfully, so there has to be punishment." This was a silver-haired male that looked extremely young. His face carried a light smile as he stepped on Qing Feng's face. Little big bro. When Qingfeng regained consciousness, his expression immediately changed. Don't come back. It's too late. You're useless now, so just stay off to the side. The silver-haired male kicked lightly, sending Qingfeng's body tumbling downwards and falling into the main hall. Blood began to flow from his mouth once again. Shi Hao's eyes were ice cold. He looked at the silver-haired male and said, "Who are you?" "I came from Yin-Yang Academy, named Yang Li." He calmly replied. He carefully sized up Shi Hao and then clicked his tongue in wonder. To have such a cultivation at this age, even a bit stronger than I was at your age. When the silver pangolin heard this, it turned its head around and said, "They won't die yet, just eating a bit of blood." It licked its lips as it spoke. The pangolin stared at Shi Hao's chest and said, "You produced a supreme being bone. The taste of your blood will definitely be quite good. There's only 3. Shi Hao asked expressionlessly. "A single one is enough to flatten this country of yours. Are 3 not enough for you?" Yang Li revealed a smile of contempt. Why did you come back?" The War King, Peng 9, and the others regained consciousness. Their faces were deathly pale, and all of them were shocked. "You all suffered?" Shi Hao said. Little big bro. Qingfeng opened his mouth and wanted to say something. His little face was snow white. He didn't surrender, and that was why he ended up suffering this punishment. Qingfeng. Shi Hao gave him a look and then looked at the 3 deities. The 3 deities' attentions were drawn. Their eyes immediately brightened and burned with incomparable passion. They all moved forward. With a shua sound, Shi Hao disappeared from his original spot and appeared high in the imperial palace. He looked downwards and said, "Fake deities, come and accept death." The golden skeleton that had an underworld flame lit, the silver-haired Yang Li, and the shining snow-white pangolin immediately rushed into the sky towards Shi Hao. Their eyes were shining with multicolored light. "We aren't mistaken. It truly is that ancient artifact." The imperishable golden body was a wonderful masterpiece that had crossed eras. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.